So, this is a response to a video of the Deconstruction Zone Bible fail number 7, only 120 years. He presents the idea that supposedly that human lifespan was being presented as being only 120 years. Genesis 6:3 says, "And the Lord said, My spirit shall not always strive with man, for that he is also flesh, yet his days shall be 120 years. And his presentation is that this is supposed to be the limit of the lifespan of human beings. However, every time I keep posting on that comment board, my posts are abruptly getting deleted. Now, it is my understanding of how YouTube works that if I post on a video, only I or the owner of the video can delete those comments. Now, I might be wrong on that, but nonetheless, I have attempted to post multiple times a very specific comment, a very specific response into his video, and it seems to constantly get deleted. I'm sure that there's another possibility of maybe it getting deleted some other way, but yeah, no. Nonetheless, this is my response to such a video. The comment that I kept trying to post, I had it typed out on a different text file, and so I just kept copying, pasting it back in every time I noticed that the comment was gone. So, Genesis 6:3, "And the Lord said, My spirit shall not always strive with man, for he is also flesh, yet his days shall be 120 years. At face value, taking just this verse, one can easily be led to think that this is talking about the number of years for an individual human life. However, since the entire chapter is about the corruption of mankind and wiping them out with a flood, there is stronger reason to think that this is a reference to how many years before the flood rather than a limit to the lifespan. That being said, in truth, the verse is ambiguous and does not clearly state its meaning, not here nor later in the verse nor chapter. An interesting thing to take note of, Genesis 5:32, "And Noah was 500 years old, and Noah begat Shem, Ham, and Japheth." Later in Genesis 6:3, "And the Lord said, My spirit shall not always strive with man, for he is also flesh, yet his days shall be numbered 120 years." Then in 6:10, it says, "And Noah begat 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth." The order of the verses here, chapter 5 references Noah's children and him being 500. New chapter, God references 120 years, then references the children in this chapter. In context, this would lead a person to consider that the reference of 120 years happened sometime before Noah was 500, say maybe 480 years, and the flood would happen when Noah was 600. That would be 120 years. However, again, there is nothing in the context to make it clear as to what the 120 years is talking about. But it should be noted that since there are actually two possibilities of a meaning here, and since in chapter 11 people are still living hundreds of years, it is safer to assume that the text is meaning 120 years before the flood. However, this is not an absolute, since there are plenty of places in the Torah that the text constantly gets things wrong. It is even internally self-contradictory. The text does not say that his years will be limited to 120, so I see it more likely that the author was intending to mean the flood. The very fact that the text is ambiguous here means that it was written by the command means that it was not written by the command of a loving and caring God who also cares about people and cares about people understanding truth. To say things in such an ambiguous way that things can be interpreted in a number of ways, speaking to that God wanting there to be speaks to that God wanting there to be confusion. Because a text from God, people will fight and kill over. Any text that has multiple interpretations, it can't come from a loving and caring God. Simply put, the end result is that most likely the author of the text, when specifying 120 years, was intending the reader to understand it as 120 years until the flood. Again, as I've said, this is not an absolute. The text is ambiguous, but with all context taken into consideration, it is more than likely that it is about 120 years before the flood.